ways. So I do appreciate that. But we're just going in circles at this point, and you're committing a fallacy of exchanging internal and external critiques. That's all.
Well, he asked
Well,
you
I don't
your
think the
view.
position
Go
of your
ahead,
opponent
Godless.
is relevant. I don't think the position of your opponent is relevant. I mean, he could write those questions on a piece of paper and you could ask yourself, right? But I have a
I don't
question about something else.
know what you just said, so I don't know.
You can respond to what I said if you want.
Couldn't understand you. I have 80 decibel ringing in both ears. I have hearing aids. I have a slight loss of hearing, and if you mumble, which I perceive as mumbling, I'm not knocking you, I don't understand. And so I say, I don't understand. Most people can understand you and others because they don't have the hearing problem that I do. That's all I'm saying. I couldn't understand you.
Oh, that's fine. I'm sorry. Um, I don't think that the position of the person who's asks you questions is relevant because he could just write those questions down on a piece of paper, or like you could ask yourself those questions.
Well, I hear what you're saying now, but that's why I said internal versus external critique. That's why I said that.
Well,
If he goes with an internal critique, it does not allow his position to be true.
he's not asking you it's not an internal critique. It's he's asking a question about your
Who's
view.
talking?
That's me, Haiti.
This was
What's the
Godless's
problem?
turn. Matt
All
can't
right.
do more than one at a time. Do people not know that?
Jason didn't know. He just got here. Um, but Matt, I actually have a question about something else. I don't understand, how could God know anything? Because he couldn't. How could he justify like the laws of logic without begging the question?
I think actually Jason, if he has a follow up, should go first because otherwise you're just completely changing topic. We'll go back to it later. I think Jason should go first.
Well, I sent him down for interrupting. I thought Godless and Matt were going to debate now.
Yeah, let's have a
Godless
quick
doesn't
discussion
even
with
know what she
Godless.
wants
Godless,
though.
do you want to debate Matt Slick right now, or do you want
Yeah.
Jason to debate Matt Slick?
Oh, now she wants to. Now she wants to.
Matt, how does God know anything? How can he know stuff like the law of non-contradiction is true without begging the question?
Perspective, God is not someone who just knows that something is true. He reveals truth because he has all knowledge of things actual and potential and all possibilities, and they are a reflection of his nature. So the laws of logic are a reflection of his mind. He doesn't have to know if his mind is true. He knows himself exhaustively in the Christian worldview. So the question is a non sequitur in a Christian worldview.
Well, I don't think a question can be a non sequitur because, like, a non sequitur is when, like, you're following some inference that doesn't really follow. But, um, wait, does God have? Let me ask you this: does God have the justified true belief that the law of non-contradiction is true?
It's not, you're misapplying it. This is why it's a non sequitur. You are misapplying this issue to God. It's not the Christian perspective. The Christian perspective is that all things that are universals, transcendentals, you want to call them, including the laws of logic, are part and parcel of his eternal mind. They are revealed to us. We, being made in his image, are able to think his thoughts after him. That's the Christian worldview. Okay.
You said they're a reflection of his mind. I'm sorry. So, does he have the justified true belief that the law of non-contradiction, which is a reflection of his mind, corresponds to reality?
You see, it's another non sequitur, but you don't understand. No disrespect meant, but before the universe created, the only thing that was extant was himself in the Trinitarian communion. So to say that it's justified true belief in relationship to correspondence to other things is a non sequitur in the Christian worldview. It does not follow. God's eternal mind is existed in the communion of the Trinity, and there was nothing for in existing external to him for forever. There's no correspondence. It's simply an issue of what's in his mind and what he knows and what he has revealed. That's all.
Wait, so he did or he didn't? So, first of all, I don't know how he would know he was alone in the universe, right? Descartes' demon could be the case. How would God know it wasn't? But does he have the justified true belief or not that the law of non-contradiction is true?
I keep telling you, you're making a mistake.
Are you saying there is not an answer to the question? Look, it's a
I
dichotomy,
did
right?
answer you.
It's a dichotomy, right?
What the?
Either he does have the justified true belief or he does not. There's no third option, right?
Could you explain to me? Let's go through this. It's for clarity reasons. Justified true belief. What is it?
Yeah. So a belief is a proposition you hold to be true. Truth is that which corresponds to reality. And justification is like it's going to require some inference and it's going to be something that raises the probability that your belief is true.
Truth that corresponds to reality is not the Christian worldview. So you're doing an external critique here.
You can ask yourself these questions, or I could write them down on a piece of paper and you could read them and ask yourself.
Hey,
Or
put it in the
God could
tape.
ask himself these questions. Okay, so God could ask himself these questions, right? Before he created anybody, God asked himself, how do I know the law of non-contradiction? How do I justify my belief that the law of non-contradiction is true? What's his answer?
For real? You're asking actually that? How do I justify my belief
No,
that the law
no, God,
of non-contradiction is true?
no.
Yeah. God, you said God can ask himself, how do I justify my belief that the law of of LNC is true,
Yeah.
right?
What's his justification?
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to say this again. That is a non sequitur in the Christian worldview. In the Christian worldview, God does not justify anything within himself. We do not say that truth is what corresponds to reality. That's not the Christian worldview. The Christian worldview is that truth is what corresponds to the mind of God. God has a certain nature, a certain existence, and all the universals that exist are, let's just say, related to God's universal, ubiquitous, and omniscient mind. So he doesn't justify something as if there's another factor or standard by which he has to apply to himself. And that would imply something all other than him and ultimate besides him by which he then justifies his own existence. That again is not the Christian worldview. I'm just trying to tell you that no disrespect meant, but you don't understand the Christian worldview, which is why you're asking the question, which is why I'm responding with it's a non sequitur in the Christian worldview. It doesn't fit. Okay.
Matt, I don't get this non sequitur thing. I don't know if you don't know what a non sequitur is, but a question cannot be a non sequitur. What do you think a non
I said,
sequitur is? But
I
also,
said,
excuse me, I wasn't finished though. I didn't interrupt you once. Um, but also, so I really want to know the answer to this. Does God have the belief that the law of non-contradiction corresponds to reality? Does God believe that?
I'm gonna write this down. Not for the reason you think. What's your question again?
Does God believe that
Okay.
the law of non-contradiction corresponds to reality?
Uh, does God believe that the law of non-contradiction corresponds to reality?
Yes.
Okay. Um, that question makes no sense in the Christian worldview.
So you're saying if God asked himself that question, he wouldn't understand it. God would be confused.
Seriously?
Yeah, you're saying if God asked himself that question, he would be confused and he wouldn't know the answer.
If God asked himself the question, he'd be confused?
Yeah, I'm asking you, like, if he asked himself that question, what would his response to himself be?
So you're actually proposing something that's not the Christian worldview, and then ask me how God would ask himself questions and what he would say.
I haven't proposed anything. I've only asked questions.
Yeah, your question has propositions in it, has certain conditions in it. So don't play the game. I'm just asking a question. You have certain assumptions that are valid or you're trying to make valid within it. So if God, the Christian God, asked himself a question, but that's a non sequitur in the Christian worldview. God doesn't ask himself questions from all eternity because he knows all things. He doesn't ask himself a question to find out something. That's not the Christian worldview. You keep making this mistake. I'm trying to tell you.
Look, I'm just trying to understand your position. because you said that like Christians don't hold to you said God doesn't hold to like correspondence theory or something. So I'm just asking, does that mean that he doesn't believe that the law of non-contradiction corresponds to reality?
I don't believe you're trying to understand. I believe what you're trying to do is find any hole that you can, and you're ignoring what I'm telling you. Let's go this again, okay? God does not ask himself anything. Okay, that's just one statement. Do you understand that? He doesn't ask himself anything. The reason is because he knows all things from eternity. So he therefore would not ask himself any question. Do you agree with that so far?
Uh, okay, I think I understand, maybe not, but when you say he knows all things, does that mean he has a justified true belief in all things?
I asked the question, you've ignored the question. I'm trying to ask you very politely and very succinctly here. You know, do you understand that that's not the Christian perspective? Okay. God would not ask himself a question. To ask the question tells me you don't understand the Christian worldview.
Yeah, but it seems like that's just like you're just saying, "Oh, God wouldn't ask himself a question and try in order to try to get out of how God would justify this." So,
With respect, you don't understand what you're criticizing. You don't understand the issue, which is why you're asking the question. Let me work this with you a little bit. God knows all things, 1 John 3:20. He does not grow in his knowledge or decrease in his knowledge. So from eternity, before the universe was created, God has always had all knowledge of all things actual, which would only be his own self in the Trinitarian communion, as well as all things potential. There be no increase or decrease in his knowledge. That's a Christian perspective. You with me so far?
well, no, I don't. There's one thing I don't understand. When you say no, do you mean justified true belief?
The Bible tells us God knows himself completely and sufficiently and totally. That's all I can tell you. That's what God does. God is not, or I should say, God is not subject to the laws of logic as if they were externals to which he must then submit. They are part and parcel of his nature. The revelation, God is consistent with his own actuality, his own essence, and his own being. He does not contradict himself, and the laws of logic, which are universals, have their universal equality because they're abstract entities. And they exist in the universal way because God exists in the universal way. This is how we can justify that they have actuality. We don't justify God's existence by using the laws of logic. We don't justify his mind by them. That implies there's something beyond God to which he must answer. That's not the Christian worldview. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You keep making this same mistake.
So when you say God knows, um, the word know, does what's the common property between when God knows something and justified true belief? Is there a common property?
So I'm just going to conclude that you don't listen to what I'm saying.
I'm trying to
I'm
understand.
giving you the answers. No, you're not. I don't believe you are.
I'm just trying to understand. I don't know if I'm not sure what you mean when you say God knows, because I don't think you mean justified true belief. Is that correct? God does not have justified true beliefs, or he does?
God does not tell us what knowledge means in relationship of his own knowledge about himself and the Spirit. He just says that he knows who he is and what he is eternally and completely. That's all the Bible says. I can't go beyond what the Scripture says in this perspective.
Right. So when you say no, does it have any does it share any property with justified true belief? Like, is it a belief? Does God
When you say
believe things?
justified true belief, right? JTB,
Yeah, does God,
the tripartite analysis of knowledge, suggesting that there are three criteria which must be met in every case of knowledge, right?
yeah, belief, a good reason for believing it and that it's true.
So you're saying now then the Christian God who knows all things is the author, the ultimate author of all things, now has to have belief in something?
So I'm sorry, are you saying God doesn't believe things?
I, well, we have to define what it means to have belief.
Belief is a proposition you hold to be true, sir.
So does God believe in propositions external to himself?
Well, whether it's external or internal, I don't think is relevant.
Yes, it is. In the Christian worldview, the eternal nature of God was by himself forever. So he would only know himself completely and totally. And as I already said, all potentiality is simply that potentiality. He brought it one realm or one thread of actuality out of supposedly an infinite number of potentialities. He knew them all exhaustively, either by extrapolation or whatever way that God knows all things. He does not define how he knows all things. And so what you're trying to do is separate the issue of knowledge and logic from God himself and say, now subject God to that. I keep telling you that's an external critique. It's wrong.
So when you say God knows all things, like he knows all true propositions, is that correct?
God knows all things actual as well as potential, counterfactuals, and he knows all the possibilities of what lies can be.
So he believes the law of non-contradiction is true, correct?
He doesn't believe it's true. I wouldn't say that about my God. I'd say it is simply true because it's part of his nature.
Okay, does he hold that proposition, the law of non-contradiction is true? Does he hold that proposition to be true?
Fine proposition.
Well, I think proposition is very hard to define. People have tried to. It's got to be something that's truth apt, but other than that, I wouldn't really be able to give a definition. I don't think anybody really can.
So you don't know what it means, and yet you're using it in a sentence. You want me to answer?
Look, we do know what it means. We get to things that can't be easily defined, such as existence and stuff. But look, we're getting off. Does
No, we're
God?
not. You asked
No.
about propositions. So
I
I'm
think
asking
I
you to
might be
define them.
able to help. I
I'm
think I
talking
might
to
be able
her.
to help.
I'm talking to her. So I want you to know, or I want to know, what do you mean by proposition? You want to go with G.E. Moore, Bertrand Russell? You want to go with Frege? What propositional definition you want to go? And then I got to ask you is, which one's true and why is it true? So you won't be able to defend it. And yet you want me to presuppose the value of some propositional statement which you have not defined what it is, and then apply it to God, which I've already told you isn't what we do.
I'm sorry.
You work
Maybe I
hard.
would.
You guys work hard at your own damnation. But keep going.
Yeah, I would love for Jack to jump in if that's okay with you. But I would also like for you to define proposition because I don't think you'll be able to do so. I think you're fronting.
Taking what? I didn't hear the word.
Fronting.
Flaunting.
Do you have a definition of proposition, Matt? I don't think you do.
Shareable objects of the attitudes and primary bearers of truth and falsity. Shareable objects, some sort of like proposition or object that people can think about, like grass is green. Gottlob, he said, the thought from 1922. Frege is explicit about the nature of the thoughts. They are not part of the outer realm, which consists of those entities perceivable by the senses. I can go on. I've done uh, analysis on this. It's the atheists who bring up this issue. I have to ask them what they think it means. I don't do this proposition thing with God and subject God to propositional truth statements. Truth exists because the mind of God exists. God is the one who knows all things. And so truth is what corresponds to the mind of God, not some proposition. See, you're offering an external critique. You don't know the Christian worldview. I'm not mad at you. I'm not trying to put you down. I'm just saying you don't know what it is you're criticizing. And you need to study. That's all.
I'm sorry, was that a definition of proposition that you just said?
Did you not hear me read what it is?
Well, I heard the
The
word,
shareable objects of the
for one thing,
the shareable objects of the
I heard the word proposition in your definition. So why would you, I didn't understand what you said, but I also heard the word proposition in what you said. So why would you put the word proposition in your definition of proposition? That wouldn't make any sense, right?
stuff. So the thing I'm trying to tell you is that God is the author of truth, not you, and not the philosophers, whether it be Frege or Russell or Moore or whatever. And I asked you what a proposition was, since you're the one who raised it with God and you didn't even know. I have to come in and help you out and say this is what the definition is that's been generally given. But then there's different people who have different views of them. Then I told you, then I'm going to ask you which one's true. But you see, this isn't going to help you. When you ask about the issue of propositions and related to God, what you want, what I'm gathering, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but what I'm understanding you say is you're trying to get God to be subject to the laws of logic one way or another. And that's not the Christian worldview.
I just want to know how God justifies his belief, Matt. And all his beliefs are going to presuppose that the law of non-contradiction is true, right? But yet he can't justify it without begging the question. Do you agree?
He doesn't justify his.
Then he doesn't have a justified true belief. You're admitting he doesn't have the justified true belief. I think okay, you're admitting God does not have the justified true belief that the law of non-contradiction is true. I think you've been thoroughly humiliated and destroyed.
Okay. Well, that's a nice fantasy of yours. But look, God does not justify his knowledge using logic. He simply knows all things. It's not a
How?
justification. It's simply a condition of God's
How do
nature.
you know it?
There's no justification necessary if it's part and parcel of his
If
nature.
he doesn't justify it, then he doesn't know it, Matt.
Okay, whatever you want to say, but you're not arguing the Christian worldview.
Okay, so God doesn't have any justified true beliefs. Then he's not omniscient. If he doesn't know all
Okay,
true propositions, he's not omniscient, Matt.
can you define what a proposition
Can
is so we can
you?
see if
Can
God knows
you?
them? You're the one who brought it up.
You-
I'm asking you.
Well, do you believe that God holds propositions to be true, sir?
What are the propositions? Define it.
I already told you it's very hard to define proposition. It's something that's truth
Then
at.
you don't know what it is, then please don't use it in a sentence and try and
Okay,
corner me. If I'm
let's
going to ask you, well,
dissect
then
your definition. Can you say it again? Is the law
no,
wait,
it's not my definition.
is the law of non-contradiction a proposition, Matt?
It's not my definition.
Is
I didn't ask. I didn't tell you what my definition was. I'm telling you what the secularists are saying.
is the law of non-contradiction a
Okay,
proposition, Matt?
it all depends what a
Well,
proposition
let's
is,
go
now,
by
isn't
your
it?
definition. According to your
I
definition,
don't have it.
whatever.
I don't have a definition.
So you don't know what proposition means, Matt?
Propositions have different meanings in different
What's it mean to
contexts. You
you?
want a universal one? Can you? You are really upset, aren't you?
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
You.
you need to chill on the interruptions, Godless,
Sorry.
a little bit.
You're the one who brought up the idea of propositions. I said, okay, what is it? You said, well, it's hard to define. Well, if it's hard to define, then don't tell me what it and use it in an argument if you don't even know what it is.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying.
Do you think you exist, Matt? Hello?
Yes, I think I exist.
Oh, you
Yes, I
just said the
said
word
yes.
exists. Can you define the word existence without just merely referring to a synonym? Watch him fail. Everybody watch him fail miserably. Define the word existence, Matt.
That which has actuality in space and time.
Hang on, I'm thinking about what that means. That's what's actuality? That's which has
Now, go ahead and
actuality.
ask.
What does that mean?
Now ask what actuality is. That which
Yeah,
exists.
God, did God
that's so
exist?
actuality is just a synonym. You just
Okay.
gave a synonym.
That means that God doesn't exist.
Wait,
So, look, we're going in
you just
circles.
gave a
What I
synonym. I
see
said
you
define it
doing,
without giving it. Sorry, I'm for interrupting. I won't do it again. But I said define it without merely referring to a synonym. So
I
that which
did.
exists is that which has actuality. No, you said that which exists is that which has actuality, and the actuality is merely a synonym. But go ahead, Jack.
Okay,
No, but
look, hold
you
on
should
before
just
Jack gets
point
in.
out.
Before Jack gets in. Look, I asked you. You're the one who brought up the issue of proposition. I'm telling you to ask you to define it. You can't do it. You turn on the attack, and as far as I'm concerned, you didn't do very well. You don't understand the Christian worldview, and I really think you need to study it. And if you guys want, sometime I'll offer this for the umpteenth time. We can sit and have a
This is
Bible
meta.
study.
Can we just... Why are we doing this?
Okay, boy, I guess you guys don't want answers, do you?
No, I don't want meta. Unless these people do. Do you guys want meta?
Hey, just stop. Just don't
He's
interrupt,
gone.
right?
He's gone. Sorry about that. He's
Yeah, I
gone.
mean, like, you guys are just fucking animals, man. Fucking animals. You know better
Go
than
ahead,
who was
Jack.
that? Albedo?
That
Was
was
that
Daily
Albedo?
Shadow.
Daily Shadow. Daily Shadow. You know better than that. Come on, man.
Godless, you should have nailed him because he said actuality in space and time. But God doesn't exist in space and time on his view.
Oh yeah. So God doesn't
So
exist
just
by his own
follow that God doesn't exist.
God doesn't exist by his own definition of
Yeah.
existence.
Really?
Especially before creation, right?
Okay.
Oh my
Now
goodness.
let me slap that one down where it belongs. When did I ever say God does not exist in space and time?
So
You
prior
don't
to
think
creation, did he exist?
Yes.
He was in space and time prior to creation?
I don't know what space would be related to him. I don't know how time would relate to his
Yeah.
nature. Generally, time is conceived of as being a sequence of events. So, since God can think and know and have interaction inside the Trinity, then it would require some sort of time, at least the implication of it, to be extant with that. I tell Christians, don't say that God exists outside of space and time because we don't know what that means. I just say he relates to space and time differently than we do. So I don't like to say what he can or cannot be or do in relation to either one. You should ask these things before assuming them from what I say. You made the mistake again. You guys are making lots of mistakes today.
Wait, so you're saying that there's time prior to creation then, right?
I don't know. I'm saying I
Well, there would
do
have to
not
be.
know how time relates to God, since one of the definitions of time deals with a sequence of events, and it implies that there would be a sequence of events in the Trinitarian communion, where's the expression of fellowship within that. The implication is there. I don't know how it would actually apply to the true and living God. That's what I'm saying.
I thought you were saying that an essential property of existence is temporality. Did I misunderstand you?
I didn't say temporality.
Time.
Time, something wrong here?
Uh,
When you
Yeah,
defined existence, you said in time and space.
Are we
No,
doing
I'm not.
Godless or
temporality is
Jack?
time.
Sorry,
One of you has to
Who,
go.
I
who,
won't say anything else. Sorry.
who am I talking to now? Is this a dog pile again?
Oh, you're still talking to Jack.
Jack.
Oh,
No one
okay.
He just
else.
cut
Okay.
out.
yeah, I thought you were saying that that was an essential property. Did I misunderstand you?
I don't know what the essential property of God's nature is. I
I
don't
wasn't
know how he
talking
relates
about
to.
God's nature. I was talking about how you define existence.
I was saying I don't know how time relates to God's nature. That's what I was
Yeah.
saying.
I'm asking you whether you said time was an essential property of existence.
Okay. I don't know how time relates to God, so I cannot say if it is or is not an essential property of his nature.
I wasn't talking about God. She asked you what
What the?
existence. She asked you to define existence, and you said something like actuality in space and time. So are you saying that space and time are essential properties of existence?
In some senses, I would say yes, but then we have existence of thoughts, which seem to have a sequence of events, but they don't seem to exist inside of I'd say a spatial area.
It went
You know,
when
like you can't.
look when she asked you for the definition. What were the words space and time doing there, if not functioning as essential properties for what existence is?
You're hard to understand, just so you know. It's faint, so I'm straining to hear every word you're saying.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. I don't know. Maybe somebody else. I don't know why it would be faint. Maybe
Oh, no, I
somebody
can
else.
hear you, just barely. I'm just saying I can
All
barely
right,
hear
but
you. So if I miss something,
I mean, I can
okay,
talk louder, but if if somebody else understands where I'm going
let
with
me
this, then maybe
let
they
me
can do it.
I
let me
can
try
hear you
to.
fine. He just said that existence is defined as having time,
Like
actuality in
she
time
yeah
and
she asked
space
him
is what
for
you
a
said.
definition, and so what I'm trying to understand is what are the words time and space doing in that definition, right? If not um, specifying the essential properties of existence.
I'm not a physicist, and I'm only offering the basic understanding and definitions I've heard. So if you want to cross-examine them, maybe we could have time to do that and go through some dictionaries, go through some texts that talk about it, so we can then see if we can get further along. I'm just telling you, I don't know how time relates to God's nature. I
Yeah, but
don't
I
know.
wasn't asking about God's nature. She was
Some,
asking what your definition of existence is.
I would just say that existence is what has. It's a good question. I'm not exactly sure how to answer it. What exists is that which occupies. I would say, normally speaking, occupies space and time and has properties, things like that. I don't even know if that's a correct definition, but that's at the top of my head.
Well, she was asking you for your definition,
Yeah,
wasn't
I don't know
she?
if it's I don't know if it's a correct definition. I'm just saying it off the top of my head. That's what it is. So now what?
Well, I think she
Now
was
what?
asking you what you mean when you say something exists.
Okay. So how has this got to do with God
Well,
now?
because the
Okay.
problem
Because now
is, the
we're
problem,
off in the minutia. We're
yeah,
not getting anything accomplished.
well, the problem is that if time and space are essential to existence, right, then that commits you to saying that God's existence presupposes that he's in time and space, including prior to creation.
No, I didn't. I don't affirm that or deny it. See, let me say this again. I don't know how they relate to God's nature. I don't know how space and time relate to God's nature. What we're familiar with is the physical world, and all we can do is by analogy raise issues and comparisons and then say this is how it seems to be how God might be. We have in theology a phrase that God is wholly other. WHOLLY. He's completely different than what we are. This is why I say to people, I don't know how God can be in all places and all time and be aware of all things. I don't know. I don't know how time and space, matter, existence relate to him. Because before the universe existed, God existed. So if we're going to define existence from a humanist perspective, it's not going to apply to God. So how does existence relate to God's nature? That's where we have a problem. I don't know how to answer the question because I'm not privy to the very nature of God before the universe was created. I'm not able to answer that question, and no Christian can.
When she asked you what existence is, how do you define it? And you said actuality in space and time. Were the words space and time there because they specify some essential properties of existence?
I don't know if I was thinking, I don't recall thinking that they were essential properties. She just simply asked me a basic question. I gave a basic answer. That's all.
Yeah, but
I
the
don't know.
point is, if they're not essential properties, how do they constitute the definition? That's the
Jack,
question.
I'm telling you, I don't know how it ultimately relates to God. Okay? Is that
I
okay for me to
wasn't
say
talking
that?
about God. I wasn't
I
talking about
am,
God. Yeah, but I'm
because,
talking about what you, when she asked you about existence, what existence means, right? How you are defining existence, meaning what you mean by the term existence. You mentioned space and time. And if you're not saying those are central properties, what are they doing in the definition?
hey, there you go. Not sure, okay, as to how it relates to God. All right? I keep telling you the same thing.
I didn't
She asked me
say
a thing
anything
about,
about God.
excuse me, but I'm trying to get onto the topic. You guys are trying to talk about the nature of God. I forgot what the context of her question was. Now what you're doing is hammering me, or tried to, on this issue is an essential property. When I now when you ask that, I have to relate it to God. Therefore, I don't know what the essential properties of existence is and actuality is, because I would have to come up with a definition that would not exclude God, but is consistent with God's revelation in Scripture. Now that we get down
Yeah,
deeper into it,
that's all that I was saying, Matt, was that it has
okay,
to be the case that if space and time are essential properties of existence, then God, if he exists, would have to, those properties would have to be predicable of him. So if it's not the case that those properties are predicable of him, uh, let's say prior to creation, then those can't be essential properties of existence. That's all that I'm saying.
I'm saying that I don't know how they relate to God. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's perfectly fine, but I'm just
Well,
trying to get you to understand the dilemma, right? The dilemma
It's
that
not
you
a
have.
dilemma. Not a
What do you
dilemma.
mean it's not a dilemma?
Physical realm is different than God's realm. He's different than
Yeah,
the
but
created order. So if
yeah,
you're going to apply category error, you're going to apply the existence defined in the physical realm to God. I'm saying we can't do that. I don't know how God relates to it. That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm trying to get you to understand what the dilemma is. And you're saying there's no dilemma, but that just means you don't understand what I'm saying.
really quick, let me try and help.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Matt,
That's fine.
all Jack is doing is he's making a conditional statement. If existence means you have actuality in time and space, and God, prior to creation, for example, does not have actuality in time and space, then God doesn't exist under that definition. That's all Jack's saying. That's it. That's it.
Except that I keep telling you guys that there's a difference between the created order and the creator, and that I don't know the relationship between God and that created order. That's all I'm saying. And I'm not going to say, because I'm not a physicist, to say what the proper definition according to physics is of what existence is, because then we get to the issue of existence, not only in the physical realm, space and time, but universals and particulars, because this is one of the age-old problems of the one and the many. And so I could easily ask the question, well, if you want to ask these questions about existence, then what are you talking about, universals and particulars? Then we can get into that issue. See, I can do the same thing and ask these varying questions, and you wouldn't be able to answer these things. So I don't understand what the problem is, because I'm just telling you that normally speaking, from what I understand, existence requires some sort of space and time, but then thoughts are something a little bit different, and yet they have actuality, and universals do too. Well, how does God relate to all this? I don't know. So that's all I'm saying is, okay, I don't know exactly how it relates, so let's move along. What's the big deal?
Well, it's a
Jack,
I
problem
don't know what
because when you
to.
say God exists, Matt, you're not really saying anything because you don't know what it means for God to exist.
just want to let you guys know,
I don't.
talk to
Let me
Matt.
respond to that.
Floyd wants to talk to Matt when Jack's done with this line of.
I'm saying that I don't know what it means for God to exist as God exists. I can only know God exists by the analogy that He's given me in creation. Okay,
Yes,
there you
so
go.
you just don't know He exists.
Don't know He
See,
exists?
the
Yes, I do.
problem is, right, that if you're saying that creaturely or terrestrial existence or whatever, right, presupposes space and time, that those are essential properties of creaturely or created existence, right? Um, and you want to say that's analogous to God's existence, but God's existence doesn't have the essential property of um, being temporal or spatial, right? Then the problem is, in virtue of what does the analogy hold? There has to be some common property across the two for you not to be equivocating when you say God exists, in just as you might say that your wife exists, right? Or I exist, or you exist. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes. And my response has been consistent. I don't know what it is to have the essential nature of God as it relates to space and time. I don't know if these things are aspects of His nature and that the physical realm is an analogy of His existence. I don't know. I am working
No,
on
but
something. One at a time, please. Let me finish. That's all I ask. Okay.
I thought you were finished. You paused, Matt. Come on. Are you done now?
Go ahead.
Okay. So you're saying you made an analogy. Again, I don't know if you heard anything that Jack just said. In order for you to make an analogy, which is what you claim to have done, there needs to be an analogous property. Something that's similar, common to both things in the analogy. All you do is keep repeating that I don't know how they're similar. So, what is the analogous property in your analogy?
What to what?
God existing in the actuality in space and time sense, the way that you understand it in the human form and the God form. You said you were making an analogy, right? What's the analogous property?
God thinks we think. That does take time, doesn't it? A sequence of events. Would you agree?
I thought you're supposed to be coming up with the analogous property as with regards to existence, right? What you did was just refer to the analogous property as being spatiotemporal, which is what you were denying as something that applies to the God's existence.
No, I
So you
wasn't.
can't use that because you were saying that's not it, right?
I wasn't denying it. I asked the
Said that you
question.
don't know how space-time refers to God, and it's just an analogy. That's what you said.
Yeah.
So then Jack
What's wrong
asked,
with that?
okay, if it's an analogy, then maybe it's not space or time, which is the common property, because you seem to have a problem with that. But there must be a common property. So what is it? And then you told me God thinks we think, which is about time. But you denied that time was the analogous property.
I did not.
So is time the analogous property?
That's what I was talking to you about. That's what I was asking you if God thinks we think. Because the idea is a sequence of events, which is an implication of time. Is that not true?
Is time the analogous property?
Say the analogous property. I'm just saying there is a degree of analogy between God and man, since all relationships of revelation of God to us would be analogous. What's the problem with
Okay,
that?
well then you're in trouble again, because now you're saying in your analog, in the way that it could be understand, time is the analogous property, and you're back at square one, where sans creation there's no time, and therefore God doesn't exist.
I didn't say that. You guys are desperate. I didn't say God doesn't exist. I certainly didn't say that time has
No,
to
that's
relate.
the
Hold on, let me finish. I did not say that an analogy is a correspondence of one-to-one. That's what your mistake you're doing. I say I don't know exactly how it works. There's some form of analogy to from God to us. I don't know how it works. Then you draw a necessary conclusion that God doesn't exist, but it doesn't. It's not necessary out of an analogy, which is by definition not precise. So why you guys? I mean, oh, I could ask why you guys are doing it. I know why you're doing it. You hate the God you don't believe in. But the thing is here, the best you guys have got so far is to try and hammer sub definitions of things. That's the best you've got, and I keep telling you the same thing. I'm just giving you an analogy. I'm not an astrophysicist. I don't know what the nature of space and time is, and I certainly don't know how they relate to God. What's wrong with that? And you say, "Well, give me an analogy." You keep searching. You keep wanting me to want to find something, and I say a statement, then you take this statement apart. I don't know exactly how it all works. You guys are just digging and digging and digging. Okay. Now, what
yeah.
do you want
The
me to do,
problem is really simple, though. You're giving an analogy.
Tom?
You're saying it's the same in some way, and then we say, is it the same in the way of time? Because you said he thinks we think. And when I ask you, you say no. And then I ask you, okay, in what way is it similar, right? You are right. In an analogy, there is some sort of commonality, but we have yet to even understand what that commonality is.
God speaks to us, and it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes sequence. So he does this. He says, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased." That took, I don't know, let's just say 5 seconds to say it when God said it. So he relates to us in our time realm. Does it necessitate that it's a one-to-one correspondence of our realm to God's realm? In the Christian worldview, we wouldn't say that. We can say that God spoke to us. Does God have English words or Greek words or Hebrew words as they were, or Aramaic at the time? Is that how he is in his nature and his essence? We wouldn't say that. We would certainly say that he entered into our world and spoke according to us, and that is by necessity an analogy. Now, how does that analogy relate to God's existence? I don't know. What's the big deal? You should just say, well, okay, you're right, we don't know. And from the Christian worldview, you could not know. That doesn't mean he doesn't exist because I can't define how time relates to his nature. This is a mistake you guys are making. You guys need to come up with something better than this. Seriously.
Anyways, I don't
Tom,
think this is going
you've
to
already
go.
blown it earlier. And, I've shown you in
Says
your mistakes
you.
earlier. Yeah, it absolutely says me.
You're still
And
salty
so,
about that, huh?
yeah, I'm very confident about it. And so here you go asking this stuff. You guys appear to me, maybe I'm wrong, but you appear to me to be desperate to find something that you can work against to continue to deny God's existence. Okay, that's your right. That's your perspective. No matter what I say, you want a subdivision or a sub definition of this and that and how this relates. And that's all that you're going on. And I just keep telling you, I don't have all the answers as it comes to this. That's all I'm saying. If you have something else you want to talk about, great. Otherwise, we're just going to continue going in a circle. All right?
Matt, you prompted
Can I?
Godless to ask you. what existence meant.
Can I ask a question
And then
going
when
back?
she asked you, I'm just going
Hold
to
on, there
summarize this
needs to
real
be
quick.
one at a time. Come on, animals.
And then when you responded, you said the time and space thing so confidently that you would think that it would apply to God, but you can't figure that out. We're trying to get that out of you.
Yeah, I was responding to Haiti, I think it was. I'm not sure. Who was asking me in a context, which I don't remember the context now. So now I'm not sure what to tell you. Okay.
Can I ask a question going back to like what Tom was asking you about the brain and the bad things?
Sure.
So if you in your Christian worldview, if I took you right now and put you in the matrix, would God come down and tell you that you were in the matrix? Would you know you were in the matrix?
Let me see if I understand your question. If God put me in a
No.
matrix,
If I put you in the
what?
matrix, if I took you, you're your normal self right now. If I took you, knocked you out, and hooked you up to a matrix machine, would you know you were in the matrix?
Serious question.
Yeah, it's a serious question because I want to know how you know I didn't do that. Like if I had done that, would God come down and tell you you were in the matrix?
So in order for the question to be taken seriously, it has to be the case, the possibility that you could put me in a matrix.
Yeah, is that impossible?
So you're saying then that it's certainly possible that a machine AI has developed a battery system of humans and we're put in that and we're not really attached to the physical world in our mental state. And you're saying that you have the power to do this in order to ask the question.
Look, I'm just saying it's a logical possibility for me to do that, right?
Is it a logical possibility?
Yeah, it doesn't entail a contradiction.
Okay, so it doesn't entail a contradiction. So everything that doesn't entail a contradiction is now a possibility?
A logical possibility, yes, by definition.
And is the logical possibility necessarily true in all cases?
Necessarily true. What it's necessarily
Is it?
possible. It's
Is
not
it?
necessarily true.
So is it possible that you actually have the power to create, maintain, develop a matrix and to take my essence, soul, whatever you want to call it, and put it into that? That's logically possible? Can you demonstrate to me how it's logically possible?
What's the contradiction?
No, I'm asking you, can you demonstrate that it is the case that you can do such a thing? Because if you can't do it, then it cannot be both the case be true that you can and that you can't. That would be a logical contradiction. So please, I'm asserting that you can't. You need to show me how you can.
Do you think it's a contradiction or not, Matt? Do you think there's a
Okay, you can't handle
contradiction?
it.
Okay,
Okay,
so if there's not a
here's the
contradiction,
word. Here's the word next. Here it is. Ready? Next.
if there's not a contradiction, then it's logically possible by definition.
Okay,
There's not.
Translation. Hand wave.
so next.
Oh,
That's what I say to people
okay.
who become absurd
Anyway,
and
I
they
would like to
continue to
make
offer
a last
absurdity.
comment. So Matt can't demonstrate that it's logically impossible, right? He can't show the contradiction. So it's logically
Yes, I can.
impossible. Excuse me, I wasn't finished. So it's logically possible. Well, you can do that as soon as I'm done then, because it didn't seem like you could before. So it's logically possible, since Matt can't show a contradiction, that I've taken him and put him into the Matrix, right? Then the question is, how does Matt know that that's not the case?
Which matrix is it? Can you define what the matrix?
Godless's Matrix.
Godless's matrix. So is the matrix like the movie The Matrix? That kind of matrix?
How is that relevant, Matt? How do you know it's not the case?
I'm asking you so I can
The
examine your.
matrix is the type of matrix that is
I'm talking to
in.
one person at a time. So you're the one who brought up the matrix. I have to know what you mean by the matrix so I can deal with the issue better. So what do you mean by the matrix? What are the parameters of it? What is it?
It's when your mentality is in a simulation, Matt.
Okay, so you're telling me then that it's logically possible for you to be able to take my essence and put it into a What would you say? What was it? The word you used just now? A simulation.
Simulation.
Is a simulation computer based?
It doesn't have to be, but
Is this?
whichever one.
It's your matrix.
I don't have to look, Matt. The mechanism of the simulation isn't relevant if it's logically possible.
Yeah, it's very relevant. Is it a machine based matrix? Because I want to know how you can then take an
Yeah, it could be.
immaterial soul. I want to know how you can take an immaterial soul and embed it into a material computer matrix. I want to know how you can tell me that that's true, because if you can't demonstrate that is true, we have a contradiction between your claims of possibility and actuality.
Yeah,
Come
it's
on.
like a compute. I hook your body up to a computer and it puts your consciousness into a simulation. Is there a contradiction in that?
Well, you haven't established that it's able to be true. What you want to do, what you guys are doing a lot, is you you offer ridiculous scenarios and say, "Prove me wrong."
Matt, you could put on.
No, you have to demonstrate.
Sorry, go
Excuse
ahead.
me.
I didn't
You
interrupt.
need to demonstrate.
Sorry.
Yeah, you do it a lot. You need to demonstrate how it is true or how it's possible, not just a logical possibility. You see, look, there's roughly 10 to the 80th particles in the universe, and if they change their state at the maximum rate of the Planck's constant, which is roughly 10 to the 40th times per second, for 18 billion years, you have 10 to the 138th power of possible events in the universe. That's an exceedingly humongous number. Now, when DNA comes together and is formed, it has to have a reader. RNA, DNA has to come in, the folds. And the mathematics that I've heard and read about is something like 10 to the 20,000th power for these things to come in place. So 1 in 10 to the 20,000th power is logically possible, even though what's called the universal probability bound, the maximum number of possible events in an 18 billion year old universe, 14.7, but if you go to 18 billion years, is 10 to 138th. But mathematically, 10 to the 20,000th power. So would you say it's possible? Of course you would. But you see, to get to the point where when there's a reach of improbability and ridiculousness, where you just say, no, it's not. But then what you want to do is you want to hold to the super technicality of a possibility. So 1 to the time 10 to the 20,000th power, it's possible. Therefore, it's possible. That prove me wrong. No. What we have to do is understand that there's, as you might like to say, you guys like to say that truth relates to actuality. You want logic to relate to actuality. You can't explain why they do. I can, but you can't explain why they do. And then what you want to do is offer logical scenarios, which you can't account for why the logic is universal in your materialistic atheistic world. And then you want me to refute your view, but you haven't even established that there's a possibility of your worldview even being true. You borrow from my worldview in order to argue against a worldview, which is self-refuting to begin with. So
He's
you're offering these things, and you don't have any semblance of truth to them, as though, oh, because it's possible, like 1 to the 20,000th power, therefore it's going to occur. Now refute it. No, because truth, mathematics, etc., relate to actuality. They do. And when something is so far gone, you don't assume that it's a truth value that you can argue from. You need to establish for me, Godless Girl, how it's possible for you, and you want to assert in the room, you want to say to people, yeah, I believe I can actually take Matt Slick's soul and spirit and comport it into a machine-based a matrix. Is this what you're asserting is the case, that you can do that? Or are you denying that you can do it? Which is it? Is it possible that you can, or is it not possible that you can?
What a joke.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you haven't shown how you know I haven't already done it. But anyway, I think that you're
Are you
going
saying you
on.
can?
You went on,
We want to
excuse
move
me,
on.
you went on for a very long time and I didn't interrupt you. And I think that you going on for more over 3 minutes, like literally over 3 minutes, was your desperate attempt to try to get me to interrupt you, which I didn't fall for, so you would have an excuse to run away. Matt,
Oh,
how do you know I haven't already done that?
don't be
So
childish,
try to,
please.
excuse me, you're being rude, you're interrupting me.
Don't be childish.
But, Matt, there's VR
Yeah.
headsets, right? That I can put on your head, right? And maybe the ones we know of now are like you would know you're in it, but there could be one that was so advanced, right? There's no contradiction in there being one so advanced that if I stuck it on your head, you would be in this like simulation, like you are now when you put a VR. You're in a simulation kind of when you put one on your head now, right? So there's no contradiction in me putting on one so advanced that you don't realize it's on your head. So I'm asking you, how do you know I haven't done that, Matt? And Floyd's in line to ask a question. How do you know I didn't put an advanced VR headset on your head and you don't know it's on your head, Matt?
We should move on. I feel like you
Because I've
guys are just
heard you
going around in
speak, and
circles.
I've heard you speak and your logic and stuff. I don't think you're capable of it.
Matt, this is Haiti. I'm the
That's
British
consistent.
one.
That
Hello. Excuse me.
wait, what he
You guys
just
have been
said.
talking a long time. Floyd has been waiting a really long time. Right? I think we should move on. And Matt, this is Haiti. I'm from
Hi, Haiti.
England. I have an English accent, just so you know.
I like it. It's pretty.
I'm not godless, right? Is that clear now?
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Can I make one
Okay.
last comment before he goes to
No,
Floyd? Just
because
a
then
quick
you did that
comment.
5 minutes ago and then he responded.
Everything he just said is completely consistent with me putting a VR headset on his head. So it's that he didn't show that he doesn't know it, that he knows he's not. That's not the case. Go ahead, Floyd.
Go ahead, Floyd.
Hello, Matt. Do you hold